Imagine, opening a journal that you wrote maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
Right, like right after a completely devastating breakup or, I don't know, a massive career failure. And at the time, you wrote that your life was just completely over.
The entry's usually pretty bleak.
Super bleak. But reading it today, sitting in your new house, maybe with a career or a family that you love, that exact same dramatic entry reads entirely differently.
It really does.
It reads like the exact catalyst you needed to change your trajectory. But the thing is, the ink on the page hasn't changed.
Not at all.
The historical facts of what happened to you haven't changed. So why did the past itself just seem to, change shape?
Well, that phenomenon is exactly what we are dissecting today. Because the human brain has this incredible, almost paradoxical ability to look at a fixed point in history and derive an entirely new reality from it.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. I mean, we tend to think of memory as like a static video file on a hard drive. You know, you click play, and it's the same recording every single time.
Yeah, like you're just rewatching a movie.
Exactly. But the sources we are looking at today suggest that memory is much closer to a live broadcast that is constantly shifting its camera angles.
I love that. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking a stack of cognitive and philosophical notes that basically ask one central question. Why can the meaning of the past change later?
Such a great question.
It is. But before we get into the actual mechanics of these notes, we really need to throw out some baggage.
Yes, please.
This deep dive is, it's not a science fiction pitch about literally traveling back in time. And more importantly, it is absolutely not some self-help exercise in, toxic positivity.
We need to be very, very clear on that. The material here is not advocating for that cheerful, everything happens for a reason kind of narrative.
Oh, I can't stand that phrase.
Right, because those frameworks actually completely miss the structural reality of how human memory operates. We are looking at this through the lens of cognitive architecture, not as a motivational speech.
Which is a huge relief, honestly. So let's look at the core paradox that the notes present.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's unpack this. If the events of the past, like the actual words that were spoken, the opportunities we missed, the separations we went through, if they absolutely cannot be altered, how is it logically possible that their meaning appears so wildly different to us as time passes?
So the central thesis from our sources offers a really elegant model for this. They say that updating the past doesn't actually mean rewriting historical facts.
Okay.
The event is locked. But as your present self changes, you are physically and neurologically rebuilding the connection path through which your present accesses that past.
Rebuilding the connection path. Okay, let me make sure I'm visualizing this correctly. So the event itself is sitting at the exact same coordinates it always was.
Exactly.
It's like a mountain on a map. But my position in the present, like the place from which I'm observing that mountain, has physically or emotionally shifted.
The mountain remains totally unchanged, but your vantage point moved.
Right.
Consider a really harsh rejection, maybe from a friend or a partner. At the time it happens, from that specific vantage point, it's just devastating.
Because you only have the information available to you in that exact moment.
Exactly. But from a vantage point, say, 5 years later, equipped with a lot of new context, you might recognize that the other person was just, clumsily trying to protect their own boundaries.
So the words they said didn't vanish. The pain you felt at the time was real.
Very real. But the connection path to the event shifted, and therefore the meaning changed entirely.
Okay, I can see how that happens organically, but I want to push back on this a bit, just on behalf of anyone listening.
Go for it.
Isn't changing the meaning of the past just, a convenient way of rewriting history? Aren't we just putting a positive spin on things to make ourselves feel better about our bad luck?
It's a really common critique, and answering it requires us to separate two things that human beings almost always blur together.
Which are?
The event itself and the interpretation of the event. Our sources map out a very specific cognitive trap here.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What's the trap?
Well, it starts when an event happens. Let's use the example of a business failure. In that moment, based on your limited information, you form a single interpretation. You say, I failed at that time.
Which is just a totally neutral statement of fact for that specific Tuesday, right?
Right. But here is where the cognitive trap snaps shut. That single interpretation hardens into a fixed self-narrative.
Uh-oh.
So the thought, I failed at that time, morphs into the identity, I am a person who fails. Or, in the relationship example, the event I was rejected, morphs into the absolute rule people will always leave.
Man, that escalates fast.
Yeah.
So my brain is essentially taking one single data point from the past and drawing a permanent trend line straight into infinity.
That is exactly what it's doing. And once that fixed self-narrative takes hold, it begins to predict your future. Crucially, it restricts your present choices. Your memory has basically stopped being a record of the past and has weaponized itself as a restrictive rule for your future. I mean, if you believe you are fundamentally a person who fails, you won't even apply for the new job opportunity in front of you today.
Wow. So the past event is monopolizing my future. But I'm trying to figure out why our brains would even do this. It seems like a massive design flaw if we just trap ourselves in these rigid cages based on one bad Tuesday.
Well, the irony is that this isn't a design flaw at all. Generalizing from past experiences is a highly efficient cognitive process designed purely for survival.
Like a once burned, twice shy kind of thing.
Exactly. By extracting a rigid rule from a painful event, your brain actually saves energy. It doesn't have to reevaluate every single new situation from scratch. It just applies the rule to keep you safe from danger.
So it's applying a heuristic. It's saying, stove hot, don't touch, which is super helpful, but then it applies that same logic to people bad, don't trust, which just isolates me.
That is the exact mechanism. What's fascinating here is that the generalization itself isn't inherently irrational. The harm occurs when that single historical record from the past blinds us to the differences in our present.
Because today I'm not the same person I was on that bad Tuesday.
Right. You are a different person. You are sitting in a completely different environment with new choices available. If you let the old survival rule dictate your present, you become completely blind to those new variables.
So memory isn't just a playback feature.
No, it is an active interference between a past trace and your present emotional and physical state.
That raises a really tough psychological hurdle, though. I mean, if I recognize that I'm trapped by an old interpretation, letting go of it can actually cause a lot of anxiety.
Oh, absolutely.
There is this intense resistance we feel to changing the meaning of our past. I think for a lot of people, if we change the meaning of a trauma, we feel like we are betraying the version of ourselves that suffered.
Yeah, that guilt is very real.
Like we are telling our past self, hey, you were stupid to be in so much pain.
That is a profound fear, and the sources spend a lot of time unpacking it. Does reinterpretation deny the earlier self? The texts argue very clearly that it does not.
Okay, that's a relief.
The knowledge, the relationships, and the physical state you had during that past event produced an interpretation that was completely valid then. You do not have to delete it.
So it's not cognitive dissonance. I'm not forcing myself to hold two conflicting thoughts until the positive one eventually wins out.
Not at all. It's not a battle between interpretations. It's about layering them. Reinterpretation is the capacity to hold multiple meanings simultaneously without demanding that they resolve into one neat answer.
Okay, what does that layering actually sound like in practice?
The text provides specific examples of coexisting statements. For instance, you can hold the thought, that event was incredibly painful at the time, and simultaneously hold the thought, that experience contributed to my present boundaries.
I see. So neither statement cancels the other out.
Exactly. You can acknowledge that situation was completely unreasonable and unfair, and also acknowledge some parts of why it happened still remain unknown to me.
It's all about making room.
Yes. Expanding the meaning doesn't erase the validity of the past emotions. It simply frees the past from being locked in a single, suffocating explanation.
Which fundamentally changes how we need to think about the whole concept of recovery.
Oh, it completely upends it.
Because usually when we talk about recovery, we use metaphors like healing a broken bone. The goal is to return to a baseline where you can't even see the fracture on an x-ray anymore. Like the goal is zero pain.
Right. But the framework we are exploring completely redefines recovery. If your definition of recovery is that the pain completely disappears, or that you return to the exact person you were before the event occurred, you are setting an impossible standard.
Because that person doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly. That previous version of you is gone. Time only moves forward.
So what does recovery actually mean in this context, then?
Recovery simply means that the past event no longer completely determines the choices available to you in the present and future.
Wait, that's it?
That's it. The wound remains, the history is still there, but a different kind of movement becomes possible. The past just loses its monopoly on your decision-making.
Wow. That is an incredibly freeing definition. It takes all the pressure off having to magically erase a scar.
It really does.
But, I do think there is a thin line here between adding a healthy layer of meaning and just sort of lying to ourselves.
Undoubtedly.
I'm thinking about the temptation to slap an Instagram filter over our memories, like cranking up the warming, the contrast to make a chaotic, ugly event look vintage and cinematic and meaningful.
That Instagram filter is exactly what the sources refer to as beautification or idealization, and they warn heavily against it.
It's dangerous, right?
Very. Beautification is when you confidently claim a painful experience was, necessary for your growth.
Which sounds suspiciously like the everything happens for a reason bumper sticker we threw out at the very beginning of this deep dive.
Because it is essentially the same trap. When you impose that kind of neat, cinematic narrative over a trauma, you are actively deleting inconvenient facts.
You're cropping the photo.
Exactly. You are ignoring the alternative paths that could have been taken, and you are totally dismissing the messy reality of the pain. Claiming a traumatic event had to happen so you could become who you are is a form of idealization that actually shuts down observation.
True reinterpretation has to be messy then.
It has to be. It
Yeah.
leaves room for the irrational. It accepts that an event might not have had a neat meaning. It might have just been unreasonable.
Yeah, sometimes bad things are just bad.
Right. And there might have been other ways for you to grow that wouldn't have hurt so much. True reinterpretation isn't about closing the book with a neat moral lesson at the end. It's about maintaining a state where multiple readings of the past remain possible.
So if individual humans are this prone to locking our own personal histories into a single narrative, like either beating ourselves up or slapping a fake Instagram filter over it, I have to imagine this scales up.
It scales up massively.
What happens when a whole society tries to process its memory?
Well, the exact same mechanics apply to civilizational memory. If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about major historical shifts, like rapid industrialization.
Okay, big shift.
What one generation proudly calls progress or technological triumph, a later generation, observing from a completely different position in time, might reinterpret as environmental destruction or unjust exploitation.
Because the later generation has new information. Like
Yeah.
they are literally living with the ecological consequences, so their vantage point on the mountain is drastically shifted.
Precisely. But societies fall into the same cognitive trap as individuals. If we look back and judge the past only by today's moral framework, we end up erasing the context, the limited information, and the available choices of that specific time period.
We impose a single, suffocating narrative over complex history.
Yes. Just like deleting the validity of our past self's pain. If we just point back and say they were entirely evil or they were flawless heroes, we strip away the reality of the event.
So a civilization's memory also needs layering.
Absolutely. It requires a structure where multiple readings survive. We have to be able to say, this era brought necessary technological advancement, and indeed, this era caused unacceptable ecological harm.
Because if we lock history into a single narrative of either total glorification or total condemnation.
We strip future generations of their ability to actively engage with it.
Okay, so if individual humans and massive societies both struggle to keep the past open to multiple interpretations, outsourcing our memory to algorithms seems incredibly dangerous.
Not a huge frontier.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. Do the notes address how artificial intelligence fits into this shifting landscape of memory?
They actually do, under a framework the text called reflective humanism. The sources explore how AI can actively participate in rereading the past.
How would that work?
Well, imagine feeding years of your old journals, your emails, or records of major life decisions into an AI system, just to look at them from a new angle.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The text suggests using AI as an interference surface or a transparent atmosphere.
I'm going to need you to pause right there. Interference surface sounds like a sci-fi energy shield. What does that actually mean in plain English for, like, my old diary entries?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Think back to the idea of memory as an active interference, like dropping two stones into a pool of water and watching the ripples interact.
Okay, I can picture that.
When you feed your historical data into an AI, the AI acts as a new ripple. It bounces against your old records and reflects back patterns that you're simply too close to see.
Oh, I see.
It might line up 5 years of your journal and point out, hey, notice how your vocabulary shifts to anxiety-related words whenever you mention this specific career goal.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. It functions like a health scan. It highlights a blind spot. But what about the transparent atmosphere part? That sounds equally abstract.
A transparent atmosphere just means the AI holds the data in suspension without judging it, like watching dust motes floating in a beam of light.
Oh, that's a cool image.
It just lays out the facts versus your inferences. It shows you the raw data of your life. But, and this is a big but, this is where the sources issue a massive caution. There is a profound danger in using this technology incorrectly.
The danger being that we let the algorithm act as a therapist and tell us what our past actually means.
Exactly. If you feed in your painful memories and the AI confidently generates a summary declaring, this event happened for your growth, or your personality tendency is X, and this person's secret motivation was Y.
It is doing the toxic beautification for you.
Yes. It's generating a new algorithmic Instagram filter, and worse, it is generating a new fixed narrative that carries the false, objective authority of a machine.
Because we trust computers to be quote-unquote right.
Right. If the AI provides a definitive explanation for your past, it is simply replacing your old psychological cage with a new algorithmically generated cage. AI should never be used as an oracle to give you the correct version of your past.
Its only job is to open up the data.
Yes. So the past can simply be thought about again. It maintains the space for multiple readings.
Wow. Okay, so to synthesize this journey for you listening, the realization buried in these notes is fundamentally liberating.
It really is.
We cannot change the historical facts of our lives. The events happened, but we are not doomed to endlessly repeat the same single restrictive interpretation of them. Memory isn't a static file.
Not all.
By observing our past from our ever-changing present with our new knowledge, our shifting environments, our newly formed boundaries, we create a living connection that allows us to rebuild who we are and really restore the choices available to us today.
Which leaves us with a truly unprecedented question.
Oh, lay it on us.
If our memory and our ability to heal are fundamentally tied to our ever-changing present perspective, what happens to our collective past when human cognition fully merges with technology?
What do you mean?
If we move toward a future of persistent augmented reality or neural implants, where we literally never forget a single objective detail of any event, if the video file truly becomes permanent and perfectly accurate, do we lose the biological friction required to reinterpret it?
Wait, really? If we remember everything perfectly,
Do we lose our structural ability to heal? Does accepting your past mean finally assigning it one true meaning? Or does it mean learning to live alongside it, keeping its meaning in a state where it can continue to change forever?
if we remember everything perfectly, are we trapped forever in the original interpretation? That is a wild, wild thought to leave off on.
It's a lot to think about.
We encourage you to let that question marinate as you look back at the coordinates of your own history. Maybe it's time to stop looking at your memory as a monument carved in stone and start looking at it as a path you can walk down again with new eyes. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.